Aloha, everybody. Welcome to 2021 and Happy New Year. And hopefully, this year will be kinder and gentler to us and treat us better than last year. Okay. Last year, there was a lot of successes. We enjoyed a lot of different things. And one of the most important thing to happen to me last year was the completion of my book, The Journey of Our Souls. Okay. So last year was mixed pot of things happening. Okay, and my books are still available. If you want a hard copy, you're gonna have to go to my website, thejourneyofursouls.com. If you want to get a e-copy, you can either email me or you can download it on Amazon, and it's been pretty active, and I've been pretty happy with that. Okay, so now the stories that in the book are there, and there's far more stories that I did not share in the book and didn't have enough room. Okay, so this story that I'm going to be sharing with you today, um, I'm sharing stories again because you asked for it. Okay, there's many of you asking for more stories, and the story that I'm going to be sharing with you actually is recorded here in my book, in one of the chapters, and I'll be talking today about meeting my Aumakua. Okay, or the kinolao of my Aumakua, the puhi. Okay. And the background behind it is that in 1990, actually back in 1989, I was hired as a social studies teacher. And in 1990, I transferred over to Kailua Intermediate, where I was given the responsibility of teaching about the ali'i, not the modern Hawaiian history, but it was the monarchy, okay, Hawaiian monarchy class. And as I started doing research in the summer leading to my first um, school year at Kailua Intermediate, I started doing research and I started reading up all of these different um, characters, in history. And as I started reading, their names looked familiar to me and their stories looked familiar to me. And so I started doing genealogy, and those people that I was reading about, historical figures, actually my relatives. So I was excited, and the more I did genealogy and asked questions to my family members about the people I was studying, and it made sense why a lot of things that was happening inside me, like the ability to see things, seeing dreams, prophetic dreams, and knowing things and seeing hidden objects that's been hid away. Concerning who I was related to, it made perfect sense. So as I started looking into my ancestors, and I started um, asking them to help me develop my personal gifts that I was given, because nobody else here alive wanted to help me develop it. So during that time, um, there was a lot of conflicts going on in my life, as far as personal beliefs, caught between my desire to develop my natural abilities and maintain my Christian identity. That's a major conflict that many of us here in Hawaii face and have to make a decision about. Okay. And um, from a Hawaiian perspective and stuff, we accept everything. From a Christian, you got to make a choice. Yeah, it's either one way or the other. And so I had a battle with that. I had to battle with that. Okay, and I made the decision to ask my ancestors to kokoa and help me and develop into the person that I need to become for this time period, for this generation, and this point in time. So as I started praying, I started to get impressions, and in one of my dreams, I used to dream of all of these different people and stuff. In ancient Hawaiians, some of them were just in kihei, some of them just came with malo, some of them just wearing cloth wrapped around them. I didn't understand what they were, but in this one dream, after asking for guidance, I met up with a older Hawaiian man, short, bearded, and he was wearing kind of like white kapa cloth that was wrapped around him. Not really like a kihei, not really like a malo, but it was more wrapped around. Okay, and when I saw him working on stone. Okay, and these stone objects were little discs, and basically he was working on mica stones, and he was chipping away. And I was watching, and I says, "Kupuna, why are you showing me this?" And he says, "Well, you learn a lot when you work with pohaku." And I says, "Okay, are you gonna teach me how to do this?" And he looked at me, he says, "No, I'm not gonna teach you nothing. What you need to do is go home, Molokai." So I go, "Is there somebody in Molokai that can teach me how to do this?" He said, "Yeah, go home, go Molokai." And so I says, "Okay, I will." And a few weeks later, after the dream and stuff, I had arranged to go back to Molokai. I called up my dad and my mom, who were alive at the time and stuff, and said that, I coming home to Molokai, and I need to find somebody that can help me shape stone. And he said, "You know anybody?" Now, the ironic thing about it is that my grandpa, William Wallace Sr., my dad's dad, when I was little, I remember he used to shape poi pounders. And he used to have so many poi pounders in his house. He sees the poi pounders to prop the doors open. So the door would be open, and he go poi pounder holding the door so the door no slam. And Hollywood was pretty windy, so having a prop like that was needed. So in his house, he had poi pounders all over the place. The ironic thing about it is that, although he made a lot of these things and stuff, I don't remember ever our family getting any of these poi pounders from him, but he used to give them away to visitors and stuff like that to the island. So there's a lot of visitors that came to Hawaii, especially Mormon missionaries that came to Molokai, and the Mormon missionaries that he liked went home with poi pounders. So that was my grandpa. Anyway, so when I asked my dad, "Hey, did Grandpa teach you how to shape stone?" He goes, "No." I go, "Okay." I don't know why I got home then. So when I got home, I started talking with my dad, and my dad had this idea. Hey, boy, why don't you go down to the fire station? Because if you were a Molokai during this time and stuff, and you wanted to find out what was happening, you talk to the firemen. Because a lot of the firemen over there, they meet and they talk story almost all day. Okay, especially when they're not that busy and stuff. So they know what's happening on the island. So sure enough, when I went home Molokai, my dad couldn't help me. I went straight down to the fire department, and I started asking the old timers and say, "Hey, anybody that still shape stone and make poi pounders and bowls and mica and like that and stuff?" They say, "Yeah, I know this guy. There's this guy lived down Kamilaloa who used to live in Holihua. His name is Cowboy Otsuka." "Really?" So yeah, I know Cowboy because he was a harvester driver for the pineapple field, and his son was my classmate. So, and so I said, okay, I know where he lives. So I went down. And as soon as I drove up and stuff, I knocked in front of his door. He called from the back of the house, and I went behind, and he had a small garden. And I told him what I was there for, and he looked at me and says, "You came here to learn how to shape stone? Yeah. Can you teach me?" And it kind of like looked down on the ground, and when he looked back up, I could see it was kind of like tearing up on his eyes. And he says, "You know, your grandpa and your uncle went teach me how to shape a stone, you know." I go, wow. So now this skill is coming, finding its way back to the line. Okay. So he was happy. He went out. He took me under a tree, and he had a couple stone that he was still shaping. And we sat down, and his shaper was the head of a hammer, and he just tap 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 the stone. He grabbed the stone and he tap 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 tap, and the stone, instead of chunks flying out like I picture, these guys sculpting all of these major sculptors in Renaissance time. I picture stone flying with, and they're whacking them with chisels to make these beautiful pieces of art. But the Hawaiian way was, hey, take your time. Because if you put too much pressure, you bang the stone too much, the stone will crack. And so all that's coming out from the stone was this fine, fine powder. And it's tapping, 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 tapping. And he said, this is it. This is how you do it. And he told me about finding the right shape of stone. If you're going to make a poi pounder, you pick up a stone that kind of like cone shape already, fit your hand, get the right weight, because you don't like mess with a huge stone and got to whittle them down. It's going to take too long. So selecting the stone became very important, okay? And treating the stone gently, because if you wrap them too hard, it's going to crack. And there was a lesson in there too, with the same way you treat the stone, you treat people. If you want to shape them, you got to do it gently. You rough with them, you're going to crack them and pull. Okay, so we sat there and we started talking story. And he took me inside the house, and he opened up some cabinets, and there were a bunch of uh, finished poi pounders and bowls that he had made. He and his children had made. He had a son, my classmate, and a daughter, and both of them were taught how to do this, and they had their own stone, finished stones. So after spending a couple hours there and understanding what I needed to do with the pohaku, I went home to my dad's house and I says, you know what, now I need to find a place. Now I need to find a place where I can find the right stone to work on. And my dad says, well, why don't you pray about it? So I prayed about it, went to sleep that night, and in a dream, I was taken down to a beach. And when I when I went to the beach, the same old man that was working with the stones, he was playing with baby eels in a pond. And when I looked at and saw what he was doing, I said, "Why are you playing with the eels?" And he looked at me and stuff. He says, "Well, I'm taking care of them. I'm feeding them, and it's something that you need to learn to do." So I watched what he was doing, and he says, I need to find a place where I can find a stone to work on. Now that I kind of understand what I need to do, I need a stone to practice on. And Kupona smiles and says, why don't you go to the place where these creatures call home? I go, okay, I'm not too sure. the eels live all over the place. And with that, my kupuna kind of like, he wanted to slap my head, but I know he restrained himself. And he kind of like just laughed and he says, "Well, you go figure it out." So in the morning when I woke up from the strange dream, I was eating breakfast with my dad, and I asked him, "Hey, Dad, is there any beach here on Molokai that would be considered the home of the eel? That's our, you know, Aumakua, or that's the kinolau of our Aumakua." And he looked at me and he kind of like shook his head and goes, "Boy, yeah, Kipui, Kipui Beach. This is down by on the west side of Molokai, right in front of the beach, right in front of the old Sheraton Hotel. This is Kipui Beach. Kipui is the eel." So I looked at my dad. I says, "Dad, I'm gonna buy your truck." So I drove from Hollywood up to Manu'a down to Kipui, and I went down to the beach and I prayed. I asked ancestors to help me to locate a pohaku that I could work on and turn into a completed stone. I wanted a poi pounder, but I would also take a bowl. And so that was in my mind. And after I finished the prayer, I sat down on the beach and started looking out into the ocean. And I noticed a large cloud, long cloud in the sky. And it just shot um, over my position and headed straight out to Makapu Point on the island of Oahu, and came over flying. And I thought it was a big jet, but when I looked up, it was a big cloud. And as I watched the big cloud flying over me, it directed my eyes towards a certain point in the ocean. And in the ocean, probably about 10 to 15 yards outside from where the shore break was, there's something in the water. And for me, it looked like a big, big log, just kind of like bobbing up and down, bobbing up and down. And it must have been close to 30 feet long. And that's not exaggerating. I thought it was a telephone pole, but it was much thicker and much fatter. And as I watched this thing floating in the water, it began to move, started to move like a snake. And I stood up and I looked at it, and it started moving from my left, moving towards my right, and it started moving towards Kawakio, which is a beach further north of Kipuhi. And so it started moving in that direction, so I decided to follow it. And I kept on following it, following it. At some point, it came real close to the beach. In fact, it was only about 10 feet away. And when it was 10 feet away, I could clearly see what it was. It was a large, large, brown, spotted eel. And I knew it was my Aumakua guiding me. And I thanked it. I says, "Thank you for guiding me." And it kept me walking towards Kawakio. And as there was a point where just past the golf course, and I started heading closer to Kawakio, the same cloud that shot over me, going over to Makapu, came back from Makapu and over my head, and it darkened the sky, and that's why I looked up and saw the cloud going back, probably going back to Maui, where it came from. So this large cloud went back to Maui, and as I watched, so my attention was drawn up in the sky. By the time I looked back in the ocean, this big eel that was just in the water disappeared, nowhere to be found. So I walked around for a little bit on the beach and kind of wondered what happened to the eel. How come what's important with this place? How come it would disappear now? So I sat down right on the sand. And right when I sat down, I felt something jabbing me in the butt, poking me in the butt. And so I moved on the side and um, I dig in the sand, and there was this round little stone pohaku sticking up with one point on top. And I started digging around. And when I started digging around, it led to a stone that was shaped like a traffic cone, a small traffic cone. And it looked like somebody just placed them right over there in the sand, cover them up and stuff. And so when I pulled it out, it fit my hand perfect. Balance was there, the weight was there. I think if I had to pound poi with this pohaku, I could do it all day. So it's perfect for me. So I pulled it out. Wow, this stone is almost done. Looked like somebody had worked on it before, but didn't complete it. So I took the stone, and right there I realized this was a gift from my ancestors so that I could finish the learning process and understand how to work stone. And so I took it, I gave a big mahalo, I offered a prayer of thanks, not only to the Aumakua and my ancestors, but also the kupa, the spirits of the place, because without their cooperation, I would never have found that stone. It was hidden. Okay, and they took me right to the spot, right where it was. So I took that home, and it was the fastest stone that I ever shaped. It took me less than a week and a half to finish it, and it was a beautiful, beautiful stone. And so this is my experience dealing and asking for my ancestors' help, and my ancestors actually responding and guiding me and giving me the tools and the abilities to learn all of these things that I needed to. Now, after shaping the stone and learning how to do that, and I shaped a lot of mica stones, bowls, and was able to teach my students at Kailo Intermediate how to shape mica stone. In fact, we had our own Makahiki festivals up there where my students were using the stones that they were shaping. So it was very applicable to what I was doing at the time. So this was a kind of like opened the gate. This experience opened the gate for me and opened the gate that allowed my ancestors to finally begin to manifest things to me and began the training process that took me years to develop, and I'm still in the process of. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story, and it's the longest one I've made so far. But mahalo for joining me today, and this is Dave Wallace saying aloha.